How in the heck do buyer's agents even get paid? That's exactly what we're going to talk about, and we're going to start right now. Hey guys, Hans Struzina with the Gunderman Group at Keller Williams Luxury International, here with another video. This time we're talking about how buyer's agents get paid. Specifically, a lot of people are constantly asking, do I need one? How does it actually work? Do I have to actually sign a paper and pay someone? Like, what's the deal? So that's exactly what we're going to get into in this video here in just a second. But if you get value out of this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up because it definitely helps me grow, and you're not going to want to miss a single episode of the content that I'm putting out here on a weekly basis. So thanks in advance for doing that. So what is a buyer's agent anyways? Simply put, they're the agent that represents the buyer or buyers, depending on how many people are in the transaction, and is responsible for handling their paperwork, being their fiduciary, giving them professional guidance, advice, as well as helping to execute and facilitate the transaction. So here's the deal. When a seller decides they want to sell their house and they decide that they want to use a real estate agent to help them do that, they will start the process by interviewing a listing agent, either through referrals or internet research or whatever. Once they've chosen that person, they'll sign a listing agreement. And the listing agreement basically says the broker of record for that listing agent, where they have their license hung, it has exclusive right to list the property for a predetermined amount of time. And in that agreement, there's also a section that talks about compensation, or in this case, commission. Typically, it's between 5 and 6%, but it's always negotiable, and depending on the situation, it may be higher, may be lower. But so what happens there is the seller is effectively paying 5 or 6 or whatever else is negotiated to the listing broker, and of that commission, that listing broker is taking a chunk out of it, which is pre-negotiated in the listing agreement, and basically holding it off to the side to incentivize a buyer's agent to come along with their client, write a contract, facilitate a deal, and close on the property. So typically, of the 5 or 6% that is negotiated with the seller, 2.5 of that is held off to the side to incentivize the buyer. So effectively, what's happening here is the seller hires the broker. That broker takes a portion of that total commission and puts it off to the side to then incentivize what's called a cooperating broker to bring their clients to then hopefully close the transaction. So in essence, what's happening is the seller is sort of paying for the buyer to come in and write an offer on their house, although there's obviously a step in between there. Now on the buyer's side, this is pretty typical of how it happens, but there are some situations when that isn't the case. There are times when a seller does not want to offer a buyer any commission and ultimately negotiates a lower percentage with the listing agent, and then the buyers are expected to bring in an additional 2 or 3 or whatever percentage points, usually 2.5, that the buyer would have otherwise made. And that is up to the buyer and that agent to negotiate when they're writing their offer. So it's always very important to make sure that if you're writing an offer with an agent, that they are being offered the commission from the seller's side so that they can get paid and they're not going to ask you for it. But by and large, the way it works is 9 times out of 10, and probably even frankly 10 times out of 10 is the way I just described. The only other thing that's important to recognize is if you have a buyer brokerage agreement in place. That basically is an official document that binds a buyer and a buyer's agent together contractually, and oftentimes there is a commission negotiated in there. And if for some reason the seller is offering less than whatever that commission is, again, usually 2.5%, so let's just say the seller offers 2%, then the buyer would potentially be responsible for bringing in the other 0.5% to make up the full 2.5%. So always something you want to be aware of, especially if you have a buyer brokerage agreement in place, and definitely something you want to negotiate up front instead of while you're in escrow, because that gets really sticky. Head down into the comments section, leave me a comment. I'm happy to engage with you there or answer your questions directly if you want to email me on some further clarification. But just remember, generally, seller pays the selling broker pays the buyer's broker. And generally speaking, the buyer who's actually buying the home is not responsible for the commission. So hopefully that gives you something to chew on and helps you a little bit further in your real estate journey. And if you got value out of this video, please consider again giving it that thumbs up and subscribing to the channel, because I am going to be bringing out content just like this every week to help you with your buying and selling process here in the Bay Area. So without any further ado, I'm going to sign it off. This is Hans Strazina with the Gunderman Group at Keller Williams Luxury International, and that's all for now. See you next time.